Good morning, or afternoon, or evening, depending on where you're listening from. My name is Jadi Solarawa, and this is Solar Roundtable. And I've got a very interesting... Do you guys know how long it took me to get this guy? I got my most wahalicious guest in the studio today because I've been chasing her for a minute. But when you hear what she does, you understand why it's a bit hard to get, to be able to like schedule the time. But I have Teleola Oyegoke in the studio with me today. Teleola, say hi to the people.
Hi, hello, hi everyone. And I'm finally here and I'm excited to be here too. So
awesome. Awesome. So we've got Teleola in the studio, and Teleola is a senior officer at SC for All. And I'm just going to let her introduce herself, tell us a little bit about what she does at SC for All before we get into the conversation proper.
Yeah, so thanks, Jadisola. So my name is Teleola Oyegoke.
Oh, did I say Oyegoke before?
Yes.
And I was determined to like...
I feel as if Oyegoke is like much easier, more common to everybody.
I was exactly, because in my head I was like, oh, it's Oyegoke. Like, I got that.
Yeah, so I lead the work we do on country carbon market activation plans for sustainable energy for all. I've been doing that now for about 3 years, and we've led a series of programs across Nigeria, Rwanda, Ghana, Kenya. We have a pilot that we're running in Tanzania currently, and we're looking to expand to a lot more countries this year. And what does that mean? I feel as if carbon markets...
Yeah, I'm definitely going to get into carbon markets, and we'll come back to that. But before we get into carbon market, because that's definitely an interesting part of our conversation. But before we get into that, reading your bio, let me tell you one thing that stood out to me, right? So I'm just going to read an excerpt from your bio that says, your work is grounded in the belief that energy access is not just a technical challenge, but a human one. Deeply connected to livelihoods, dignity, and opportunity. And that is interesting because, bios are about like, I'm this is what I do, my titles, and, tell me a little bit about that, because for me, everything has to go back to like, that human part of why we do what we do. So tell me a little bit about what made you add that in your bio.
I think the analogy that you say, experience is the best teacher, is a real thing. So when I started off on a World Bank project in the energy sector. I started off as a World Bank project as an officer with the Rural Electrification Agency, like a while back.
Oh, wow.
And we went to the trenches. When it's like we're going like inside like communities, because we had to do this community engagement, and it was very important that we did them ourselves, so it's verifiable. And World Bank ensured that we had to do that before we go in or electrify any of those communities.
Absolutely.
And I think for me, I was able to see the impact, real life impact. Like I was there, living in the community, going through the canoes, all of that, and really seeing how excited people were about the opportunity of energy. And I think that really just stuck for me. And like, you can actually transform a life, and it's so impactful. Like, you can take someone from thinking that they have no chance to actually building a sustainable business and going out of the poverty that they think that they can't, go past. So I think that has always been a driver for me, and that's what has really led to the passion in driving it across.
Fantastic. And I was, like I said, I was looking at your bio, and I'm like, you've got this title, and you're the senior strategist here, and this, and I think sometimes the cocoon that we live in and that we walk in, and what our titles or the work that we do, what it exposes us to, it helps, or it makes us forget sometimes, right, the real reason, like the lives are meant to be touched by the work that we do in all of our offices, fancy offices and all of that. So thank you for sharing that, because that kind of like really stood out to me, and I was like, I was definitely going to ask you about that. So as you were saying earlier, you work for the SC for All. Tell us a bit about the work that you do for the SC for All and how that's moving the needle forward when it comes to energy access. I know SC for All is about a whole lot of different things, but tell us how, the work that you guys do is impacting energy access.
Okay, so SC for All, I absolutely love what I do to start with, because SC for All actually allows you to see and feel impact. So we are part of the UN system, UN Ops, and it's called Sustainable Energy for All. That's the full meaning of SC for All. And our goal is really very simple. It's to drive SDG 7, which is access to reliable, affordable, modern energy for all. Yeah. And I think that we had an event today, and somebody said something that what I love about SE for All is that they're not just about, we have documents. They actually go there. Like, we would go there, we would speak with the people, we would stay with the community, and we will bring the difference that is required. So we have a range of different programs that we run. from energy access initiatives to clean cooking to clean cooling to result-based financing to grants. We've supported in so many programs. We've facilitated support with like the DARES program that World Bank is running. And right now, the most exciting thing we're doing is M300, which is electrifying 300 million people in Africa.
Ooh.
And it's a World Bank AFDB collaboration, but we're playing a major role as the like main implementer, like partner, and really driving the work or organizing the project management around the work. And it's just really exciting to be part of that community. I think there's lots of diversity as well. Like we have a range of different people from different parts of the world, and it's just a really good learning experience.
Awesome. Let me put you on the spot for a minute. The M300, do you really think is achievable?
It is achievable. Honestly, I feel like it's big. It sounds like a lot, but I think that when we look at it from the little parts of aggregating into the whole, it's very, very achievable. And I think that with the effort that is going behind like the World Bank, with the AFDB, with the push from, the countries, the cohort countries that are also participating here as well, it is very achievable, but it requires a lot of funding.
Don't worry, that's probably another conversation for another episode of the podcast. I will probably get you back here to talk about that. So let's look at another aspect of the work that you do and that you were so eager to get into. That's the carbon market activation plan. And that's also exciting for me because, at All On, we've done a number of things with IC for All, but this is like the latest project that we've collaborated on. So it's actually very special to my heart as well. So in the simplest of terms, right? Tell us what the carbon market activation plan means, because, and I want you to tell it in two ways, right? I want you to describe it in the technical term for what, people, the operators in the space. And then I want you to describe it in a way where the average guy on the street would get it. And let me say the reason why I'm saying this, guys, because I remember when the project first came up, in my head, I'm thinking, I'm going to say in Yoruba, Ibulatu Jasi Bai. Where are we going? What's this whole acronym, this whole like carbon market? We've never dealt with the whole energy thing, now we're carbon marketing. So break it down for us in a way that, that we get it.
Okay, so first of all, carbon market, everybody's like, how did you get into carbon markets?
Exactly.
And I'm like, I absolutely love it. I think for me, it's seeing it from the impact it can bring as well. So with regards to technicality, carbon credits is basically like a metric ton of carbon removed from the environment is an incentive of the metric ton of carbon removed from the environment, as simple terms. So basically, it's like saying, you are using a clean cook stove. So instead of using firewood, you now decide to go into, let's say, an electric stove. So from switching to that alternative, as you're using the firewood, you're emitting carbon dioxide to the environment.
Absolutely.
So from switching that's calculated in a molecular form in metric tons, and is then calculated as the savings that you are preventing from going into the atmosphere.
Fantastic.
That's basically what a carbon credit is. And it's really big because we actually are not really high emitters in Africa.
Exactly. We're not.
But it's also an opportunity for us because with carbon credits, the atmosphere is large. It's not like, because I'm not emitting Africa, it's not going to affect other parts of the world. So it's also a way to balance it out in a way that's proactive. It also ensures like development, especially for South countries, but it also allows for exchange of technology and a lot of things that we don't actually see that go into the actual production of these carbon credits. There's so many solutions that are very exciting now that people are going to and that we're looking to dive into a bit more in Nigeria. So with regards to the carbon market activation plans, which is very exciting. Every time I talk about it, I'm like, you people don't know the work that went into this thing.
I have an idea looking at it from the outside inside, but
everybody's just like, we have to do this, we have to get this done. So basically, what we do at SE for All, and it's very important to us, is that we support governments. We believe that at the root of everything is policy and the foundation is government. So we're thinking through how do we create this enabling environment to ensure that this carbon market opportunity thrives, because it's revenue accruable to the government. So what we did with the Nigerian Carbon Market Activation Plan and Manual of Procedures is that we really just went in. Luckily for us, as I say, we get into the trenches. So we're able to support with this development of the Intergovernmental Committee on Carbon Markets, to which was chaired by the DGNCCC and the chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service at the time. And we really thought through, how do we catalyze the market and think through through the policies that will recreate like an enabling environment for it to thrive. And that's what we really did with the policy. It's very simple. In Nigeria, a lot of the project developers that we had, they're like, we don't know who does what. How does it work? How do we get into it? So it's really like a guidelines that give like credence towards how you move across the ecosystem. But it also not just does that, it also gives the manual of procedure. So at each stage, there's a streamlined process and there's visibility towards who does what. And I'm happy to say that, it's been in the news. His Excellency the President announced it in Abu Dhabi. We also had the Vice President launching it at the last committee meeting that was held. So it's very exciting, honestly, and we're looking forward to implementation 2026.
Fantastic. So off of what you said, let's break it down a little bit more, right? So SC4L has been instrumental in getting the policy and all of that done. And I think, excuse me, when you were talking, you talked about revenue accruing from it. So again, just for the average person, right? I'm going to break it down the way that I understand it. So rather than say use I better pass my neighbor generator, for instance, right? You maybe power your home with solar. So the carbon that you would have emitted if you were using that I better pass my neighbor gen, which is emitting all sorts of crazy into the air, is what you calculate as the carbon emissions that you've saved the atmosphere from getting, essentially. So when that happens, who gets the revenue for it? Whose money is it, and where does it go to?
So that's a very interesting question. And then there's been some indications of how that procedure works with regards to the manual of procedures and the policy in itself. And it's called benefit sharing, which is the main thing. Because the way it works with carbon credits, it's not that, okay, if let's say you go to a store and just say, okay, I'm not using charcoal again, I'm using electric. Yeah. It's not like you're going to go to a website and say, okay, I've done this.
Yeah.
It's a process of aggregation. It's a collective. So it's gotten from aggregated, the value comes from the aggregation of the credits. So with regards to that, Nigeria has different formulas. There's not one size fits all, but there's a co-benefit sharing formula that speaks to the fact that whatever is done goes back to the community. So that can look very different. That can look like, okay, is incentivized by the product itself in the clean cook stove. There's like a subsidy there. Or it can be like, oh, you're building schools in the community, or it can be like you're educating people. So it looks different in different cases. It's not one size fits all, but I know that the NCCC is working very closely to develop very clear principles for the different methodologies. So there's guidance towards how the benefits are shared as well.
That's fantastic. Thank you for explaining that so that everybody kind of like just understands, how this works. Okay, so one of the other things that you said earlier as well when you were talking about it is the fact that, Africa is not necessarily like big on the emission scale, if you want to be very blunt and very honest about it. So how does this work on a global scale? Because I think initially my question was going to be, how many countries would you say have embraced it or tapped into the whole global market policies? But I think that maybe let me ask the question in two ways. So how many countries have tapped into it and have embraced it? And how do we ensure that there's some level of fairness as well? Do you know what I mean? Because I think the way I'm thinking about it is if you're like emitting 5 billion tons of something and I'm emitting one, it's kind of the way I always say that God is not going to judge us for all our sins the same. If you're a murderer, your sin scale is like way higher. So how do we ensure that there's fairness in the space, when it comes to maybe like the developed countries vis-a-vis the not so developed countries, and then on a collective level, how many countries, we could even use Africa as an example, so how many countries in Africa have tapped into this whole space?
So I'll be confident to say about 80% of countries in Africa have carbon market policies, indications, frameworks.
Oh wow, that high.
It's quite high. Now they have it. Is it working is the question.
Yeah.
So they do have it. There's an indication towards their approach on carbon markets, because to be honest, carbon markets does have the potential, especially for developing countries, to give some level of revenue. However, the implementation is what is the challenge. So there is a document that speaks to your treatment of carbon markets. but there has to be like co-implementing and partners that actually help to drive it through. And I think that that's something that's missing. So I wouldn't say that it's an absence of, even though the policies themselves, they do need refinement, they do need updates, they need to be based off facts and data, not just what you think should be.
Yeah.
But with regards to the actual implementation, I see that's really where the gap is in like translating what you have put down to actual action that is beneficial to your country. Now, with regards to what you said about the fairness around it, I think that it's in phases and it's a skill. I think that with the likes of the Paris Agreement, a lot of countries are actually taking, a lot of developed countries are actually taking real action. There's so many different mechanisms that they use to ensure that, okay, just because you can offset credits doesn't mean that you don't have to reduce.
Yeah, so it's still that sense of responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of regulations that speak to that, not to remove them from the responsibility of actually having a just energy transition and reducing their emissions, etc. Like there's cap and trade systems, there's carbon taxation, there's so many things that are going on in developing countries that actually help to bring that balance to bear.
Awesome. Okay, so let's move to something, that I've also wondered about, right? I mean, we've both talked about the fact that Olon was active in kind of like, supporting SC for All to put... You're welcome. To put the whole carbon market activation plan together. So would you say that it's really crucial to the work that you do to have private sector participation? And how do we get more people, in the private sector to understand that, like supporting organizations such as SA for All will essentially, it's kind of like maybe the way to go, right? In terms of having the right policies and regulations in place that then help all of us as a collective.
Yeah. I think it's absolutely critical because without the likes of yourself, like NSIA, UNDP played a huge role as well in the Nigeria Carbon Markets Activation Plan, it would have been a bit difficult because it's not, there's in a country where there's a lot of priorities, it might not be the top priority, and financing needs to support the development of these plans.
Absolutely.
So I think the first thing that we need to do, and I think it's something that we've really done with the activation plan, is the awareness around the importance, because private sector is the largest beneficiary.
Exactly.
They are the largest
Absolutely,
beneficiary. Yeah. Yes, the communities get that, but the ability to do these technologies, there's such a vast market that you can tap into that, there's a lot of awareness on. So I would say that definitely in 2026, we also are thinking of new strategies to bring everybody in the ecosystem on the table so that everyone is able to actually play a role in driving the very, very essential energy transition that we need as a country. So definitely, that is all we're looking for. We're looking for more private sector actors. We're looking for more partners. We really can't do this alone. It's a collective effort. So we're open to partnerships.
Awesome. I mean, just off the top of my head, I'm thinking, maybe something you can do is like gather all the private sector people into the room and be like, okay, what are you interested in? What are you interested in? What are you interested in? We will supply we will help you make it happen, like, oh yeah, join up on this queue. If you're interested in this, join this queue. Seriously. Everybody come to the principal's office. So yeah, tell me where you stand. Are you a science student or you're not a student? That sort of thing. Awesome. So, I mean, as we kind of like gradually get to the end of this conversation, because I could sit here and talk to you for ages, but you have over a decade of experience, right? That cuts across climate, energy, social development. Before I ask you that question, let me tell you where I'm coming from. So prior to working with Olon, and I guess to a certain extent, my work at Olon still falls within that whole social development space, right? I've loved working in the social development space, kind of waking up and knowing that the work that we do makes a difference in someone's life and things like that. So, but I think this is also coming from a place of understanding, because I've been in that space, that sometimes it feels like the talk outweighs the real results. And that can be a bit, what's the word? Kind of like disappointing, maybe a bit depressing, because when are we going to really move the needle? You've been in this space for a decade, over a decade as well. And do you feel like it's happening? Or, how do you feel? Are you in that space where you're still like super optimistic about, like all of this work is going to M300, for instance? Or do you feel like, what? Yeah. Where's your head at?
I'm super optimistic. I think generally my disposition in life is to be
Optimistic.
So fair enough. But I think
that's because you live in Abuja, not in Lagos, but okay.
to be honest, I don't know how you guys live in Lagos. I can't. It
but that's okay.
But yeah, and I think that I would answer this with a story.
Okay.
So how this actually started for me as a passion with energy. When I was doing my community engagements, when I just started off my career, I went to this community, very, very in-depth community. I had to go on a canoe in Ogun State. I met with this lady, and she was so excited, older lady, about us bringing energy to her community. And she said something to me. She said that she would send me a crate of eggs every month if I promise that they get this done, because her daughter needs to read in the night and they don't have light. And that whole thing was a defining moment for me. And I was just like, the commitments to it. She was like, wherever I am, that the egg will come to me. And I was just like, my eyes were tearing up. I was just like, this is just a lot. And just Bobo. It wasn't like she was looking to power a fridge. Yeah. She just needed light because she reads in the night, right? Because where school is far, she'll walk. So it's only in the night she has to read. She has exams and everything. So it really just touched me. And I think that optimism has really helped me in driving action. And I think that's something that I really love about the organization I work in as well, because everybody it's not just like when you're ticking a box, you don't go the extra mile. But when you know that this is somebody's livelihood, this is somebody's life, you take it a bit, it becomes a passion, it becomes a mission for you. Like, it's not about a program, it has to work. And I think that that's how all of us see the work across board. And when you see the results in the communities, I know there's a program we're running in Tanzania with public schools. If you see what the places where they were cooking before for the kids compared to what has been refurbished, and the kids are so happy, the people cooking, everyone is so excited.
I feel like sometimes we get jaded, right? Just because like we take things for granted. You get home, there's power, you can put your AC.
You take it for granted.
Because when you see what a difference, like the smallest things that makes in the life,
worry, and you see them and they have lights and they're excited, and I'm just like. And I think that's something that's very important, and you said that, is that don't get disconnected from what you're doing. It's very, very important to also remember why you're doing what you're doing, because those little testimonials just like spur up energy in you, and it just excites you to want to think more, be more creative, and do more.
Absolutely.
So I'm definitely optimistic. I feel like 2026 is going to be fantastic for Africa as a continent. And we're definitely going to see more progress.
Awesome. I'm here for it, because honestly, that's what gets me out of bed in the morning. Like you said, it's the lives that are changed, right? Because otherwise, there's the tendency to be like, are we really doing something? And that kind of leads me into the final question that I had for you, which is about, telling us about any special moments in your career. Are there any other special moments in your career that's kind of made you think that, that makes you get out of bed on those days when it's difficult to see the light at the end of the tunnel?
There's been a lot. I think that the most recent one was on the carbon market activation plan. I think why that was because it was a very hectic hurdle. There was a lot of tussle, and it did take some time. But when it was finally passed, I think it was very exciting because it translated from efforts. It was almost a year of efforts that translated into a tangible output. So I think that at least for the most recent time, I think that was the most exciting thing for me. And now I'm just like, what next?
What next?
Like SRSG, my boss asked me, she's like, Tele, okay, everybody's celebrating this policy. What next?
What next?
And I'm like, I have a plan for you.
And that's it. That's it, absolutely. Because even with us, a few years ago, we said, okay, you know what? Outside of the investment that we do in the space, let's also give it, put in grants, right? To build the mini grids and everything, and that's a project that I manage personally for Olon, and every time I get the reports, I'm getting stories the community, they're employing people from the community to kind of work on the site to build the mini grid. I'm like, that's what we need, a sense of ownership. Exactly. So imagine you walking by and pointing, showing your son, I worked on that, and then I'm one of the people that brought power to this community.
I love something that I absolutely adore my organization, SE4O, is that we always ensure that there's a way to give back. So there's a STEM program we run with the universities that we're part under, like NEP, Nigerian Education Project, and also with DIS, is that women, like actual women, and we have like them being technical, and they're trained, and they're like they can monitor, they can maintain the systems, and you see these kids, these girls with their hats, they're so excited and they're like professional engineers now. So just with what you said, it's like giving back to the community and making sure it's a cycle of growth. I think that's very important.
I'm excited. This is why we do what we do, ladies and gentlemen. This is why. And I love the fact that we have these conversations on this podcast, right? Where, I tell people, like, I remember when we were talking about doing the podcast in the office, it's like, I don't want it to be technical. I don't want it to be like us throwing numbers. And I want to talk about the real lives that are being changed and the human experiences that we have, with the work that we do. And this has been another beautiful one of such episodes where, I'm just smiling and I'm just like happy from my insides about, the conversation that we've had. So Teleola, thank you very, very much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Very excited that we're taking the good news of the CMAP to the world.
We are.
And hopefully we've kind of like just made it a bit easier for one person to understand what that whole space is about. I promise you guys, it took me months. Even me, when I started the project, I'm like, what is this now? How do I even explain this? Like, because it's not a tangible product that you can say, this is the product, or, you're building a mini grid or you're doing this. It's something that it takes a bit of you thinking about it, like, okay, how does this help? And I'm glad we had the conversation with you. So thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, Jade.
Awesome. And that's how we end this episode of the podcast. And I can't wait to come back to you with another interesting guest and another interesting episode. Hopefully it'll be a topic that, we don't have to break down so much for you guys. But till next time, this is Solar Roundtable with Jadi Solar, and this is brought to you by Olon, and I will see you all next time. Bye.